Let's take things back home. We have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He will be beginning his second term as Canada's Prime Minister with a weakened hand. Of course, one of his top priorities will be the need to address growing tensions between Ottawa and Western Canada over the struggling energy sector. Joining me now is Naheed Nenshi. He's the Mayor of Calgary. Great to see you again, Mr. Mayor.
It's always a pleasure to chat with you, Greg, and to figure out where we go from here.
All right, so let's start with that right now. You are in the epicenter of oil country, Calgary. You are the mayor. What's the feeling among the people in terms of, we're hearing that there's a lot of frustration with Ottawa, in particular the fact that Trudeau will return to Parliament as PM.
Well, there's been a lot of frustration with the federal government for many, many, many months now, almost from the moment that Prime Minister Trudeau was elected. You know, part of that was engineered. Part of it, though, is very, very real and reflecting some very, very real frustrations with the state of Alberta right now and the state of Alberta in Confederation. You know, we have always been the economic engine of Canada. We've always been, well, not always, but for many decades, we've been the ones providing economic growth to the rest of Canada, providing jobs for people from across the country who come here to grow their lives here. And though we whine about it sometimes, we're actually kind of secretly proud of the fact that we've been able to help the Canadian family along. The challenge we've got right now is that the economy is running on all cylinders across the country, except really here. And certainly you can never balance the federal budget if Alberta is not doing well, but it's also not good for the nation if Alberta is not doing well. And a lot of Albertans feel like we've been making the case that, look, it's time for us to have a special focus on Alberta and no one is listening. And I think that you saw a lot of those frustrations boil over during the elections. Certainly, we don't have any Liberal seats in Alberta. That's not all that new. You know, we didn't have any prior to 2015, and we'd never elected a Liberal in Calgary since 1968. But there's a sense that that's just piling on now. And it's going to be very important for the new federal government to make some very bold steps very early to show that they recognize the needs of Alberta, including reaffirming their commitment to the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which I think will happen quite quickly, as well as really talking about balancing energy and the environment. I think that Premier Kenney's open letter to the Prime Minister yesterday was quite helpful. He's certainly no great friend of the Prime Minister at all, but he laid out a path of things that we might be able to work together on, and I think the federal government would be well served to read that letter very carefully.
Now, every time that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, including today in his first post-election availability with journalists, is asked about the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, he says it's going forward, we bought it. But when you talk to people from the West, they still don't believe him. What's it going to take? We need shovels in the ground, many shovels in the ground. Do we need to start seeing some progress?
There are shovels in You know, I have to say, sometimes I feel bad for people because there are shovels in the ground, and it certainly is proceeding. But there's a lot of folks who just don't believe it. You know, sometimes you hear on the streets of Calgary, oh, the federal government just bought it to shut it down. You know, they could have just shut it down. They could have saved $4.6 billion if they didn't want it. And I believe that with the Liberals and the Conservatives in power, they can make common cause here and say, look, this is important for the country and we need to move forward. But it's going to take some willingness on both sides to be able to put down tools and just say, look, our job is to get this thing built.
Now, you mentioned earlier, of course, that we don't have Liberal representation for that part of the country. And then when it comes to forming a cabinet, which Mr. Trudeau says he will, announce his new cabinet near the end of November, how do you get that representation around the table? Is that a big concern for you?
Yeah, it sure is. And in fact, I don't mind saying that I spoke with the Prime Minister this morning, and I was actually pretty impressed that he called 36 hours after the election specifically to talk about how he's going to make sure to have Alberta in the picture. But also he was seeking advice on what are the best ways to do that. And certainly there are parliamentary ways that you can help with cabinet, including using people from the Senate and so on. But I think what's really critical is that he has Western voices advising him, folks at the center, whether they're elected people or even advisors. And that was the case that I made to him quite strongly. And, obviously suggested that myself and the other mayors would always be willing to be that sounding board and to provide him with some intelligence on the ground here as well, as we would do with any government.
Interesting that he called you to tap your on-the-ground expertise. Of course, it is tradition that members of the cabinet.
Yeah, I don't get a call from the Prime Minister every morning, so
that's not how you start your day every day. Him again.
Not every morning. No.
Yeah, but the fact that he did
while
call
you're shaving, the phone rings with a 613 area code.
It's a special phone too. It's a special phone. And maybe it would be a special phone if he gave you a call and said, I understand that usually by convention we have elected members around the cabinet table, but it doesn't have to be. What if you put the mayor of Calgary around the cabinet table? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Geez, what a thing to say. I got a pretty big job now, but I am also a loyal Canadian. I am a nonpartisan. That's why I wear purple every day. It's red and blue. And I am always willing to help anybody who's seeking public service to do what's best for this place.
Okay, so one of those...
But no, he did not call to offer me a job.
He did not offer you a job around the cabinet table. Okay, very interesting. So as you work for... obviously you have what seems to be a good working relationship with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and you are the mayor of Calgary. So I think this should give, at least for me, it gives me hope that we can find a way forward. Because he talks about reaching out to the West, but obviously there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I think this is critical, right? That's the really nice thing about being a mayor, is that you're nonpartisan. And I have a very good relationship with Premier Kenney. I have a good relationship with the Prime Minister. I had a good relationship with the previous Prime Minister. I've actually had 6 premiers since I've been mayor from 3 different political parties. And I haven't been mayor that long. And so that's one thing that we're always willing to do, all of us mayors are willing to do, is act as that bridge. And if called upon to help continue those conversations, I think we got to do it. We have two basic broad options here in Alberta, which is to be really angry and to continue to stew in our anger, or to say, you know what, we've got a government now and we have certain things we got to get done, including getting those pipelines built, and what is the best way to do that. And I think that all of us here in the West, elected officials and regular citizens, need to really think about how we're going to move for what's best for this province and what's best for the country.
It's always a pleasure catching up with you. Hope to speak with you again soon.
Thanks so much, Greg.
That was Naheed Nenshi. He's the mayor of Calgary.